Okay, aloha and good evening. So I got to be first because I missed the rehearsal. So, but in any event, I'm going to be telling you a story about my childhood. So when I was a kid, my family moved to a house in Wailuku town. We rented. It was a pre-war plantation era house. So, it was single wall construction with salted redwood planks, tongue and groove, Koenig ceilings. The electrical and the plumbing was exposed inside and out. We had 3 doors. Very unusual for Maui, or used to be unusual for Maui. We actually used the front door to our house because that was the closest one to the road. And actually, there was one in the kitchen that nobody ever used, except one time I was taking a shower and my brother called me into the kitchen. And as soon as I got there, he ripped the towel off me, pushed me out the door, and locked the door. So that's my only memory of ever going through that door, and it was going out. But fortunately, there were 4 houses where we were, and we were sort of one of the flag lots, and there was a mango tree between our house and the house in front and the road. So I don't know that anybody actually got to see the goods as I was frantically trying to figure out how to get back into the house with nothing on. But anyway, so the neighbors in front of us were the Kahai Ku'ueloa Ohana, headed by Auntie Bernie. And across from them, also fronting the road, was Stella Kimura. She had a hair shop. I think her daughter was involved with that, or actually her daughter was always there. And then across from us was an old Okinawan man named Toyama-san, who was a retired night baker from Yokouchi Bakery. And so it was very funny. So he would wake up early in the morning, and basically what he would do is he would bake all day and have NGN on the background, kind of blaring sometimes not. And then he'd give his baked goods out to, I guess, everybody. And we got a lot of baked goods. And in exchange, we would give him, whatever we had made for dinner. I mean, it wasn't like, oh, you give us pie and then we give you dinner. But like if we had dinner, we would give it to him if he didn't have dinner and that sort of stuff. And there was sort of an exchange that was going on in our little group. And anyways, one night, Toyama-san did not go to bed early. He usually was all after dinner. You'd see his light on for a little bit, and then that was the end. But one night, early summer, he was totally awake, and he said, "Let's go to the Wailuku Jodo mission." And where we lived was right in between the Wailuku Shingon, Wailuku Jodo, and Wailuku Hongwanji. And so he's like, well, let's go there. And then I was like, oh, okay. And before I left, Auntie Bernie and actually my father put chow fun orders in. And I didn't exactly know what was going on at this time, but I just took the money and I went, and I did get them their chow fun. I ran back, I gave it to them, and I went back. And Toyama-san, what he did was he was actually inviting me to the Wailuku Jodo Bon Dance. And at that point, I had never been to a Bon Dance before, so I didn't know anything about it. And he didn't dance. I mean, he was like, I think at that point, he was like in his 90s. But he was basically in the back with these other old guys, and they were, I don't know, talking story, bullshitting, whatever. But he told me, oh, you should go and dance. So I went into the ring. And if you don't know anything about Obon, it basically anybody can participate in the dance. It's a communal form of dance. You just have to sort of have respect for the form and want a willingness to participate in good faith, and you can participate in it. Although there are people who in bad faith participate in it too, and it's obvious. Anyway, so I don't really know. I can't remember what this first dance I danced to was because I don't know Japanese and I didn't really know what I was doing. I think sort of from the hand movements, it possibly was Tabeyoshi Sodoete or Nippon Yoi Toko, but don't quote me on that. But I had a really great time. And because I had been the delivery boy, I actually pocketed a little extra money, and I bought myself shave ice somewhere near the end. And that I really remember because I got brain freeze. And then when I got home, I had like a layer of Malolo syrup on my tongue that I was fascinated with in the mirror. So anyways, I had a great time. And Toyama-san, there wasn't a lot to do at night when I was a kid. So that and the Rap Replinger albums constituted nighttime fun. Okay, so anyways, so that was that. And then a couple of weeks later, Toyama-san again, like, let's go to the Wailuku Hongonji, which was a block in the other direction. And so we went there. And of course, the Wailuku Hongonji has a school and the Boy Scouts and stuff. So there were way more people there. And it was sort of a similar experience, except that this time, the guys that Toyama-san was talking with, they were drinking beer. I was like, oh, I don't associate church and beer, but got to learn something new. And I danced again, and I remember actually much less about Wailuku Hongonji, except that there was a man that was dancing in Geta, and I remembered that. But other than that, I don't really remember. Well, anyways, fast forward a little bit, we moved to Dream City, about a block away from Maui High, and a couple of years later, my grandmother came to visit, and I actually should explain a little bit about my grandmother. So her father was a superintendent in the Philippines. She's Filipino, and right at the beginning of World War II, the US military appointed him as the military governor of Nueva Vizcaya. Well, I'm sure if you know anything about world history, that didn't last very long. And instead, her family had to hide from first the Imperial Japanese Army and then the Kempeitai throughout the whole war. And the first part of it was in the jungles or the forests of the mountain province. And then eventually he was able to sort of hide in plain sight in his hometown in Batangas. So her stories as a child were all of these very magical, heroic confrontations that she had with Japanese imperial soldiers or the Kempeitai, where she somehow outwitted them with her rhetorical skills. But as an adult, I know that girls who are going through puberty first of all, did not have any rhetorical anything with Japanese soldiers who didn't speak Tagalog or English or the Kempeitai. And so I'm not exactly sure what really happened in her encounters, but I don't think it's how she described it. Also, her mother died during the war. She contracted tuberculosis while they were in the run. And at the end of the war, her body was no longer in the grave that they had buried her in. And so my experience of her was she really didn't like people who were Japanese, and she didn't like things that were Japanese. She wasn't a hater, and she wasn't mean to people. She was always very polite, but she just she disliked all things Japanese. So she comes to visit us, and we decided, I don't know why, but somebody in my family decided, why don't we take her to the Kahului Hongonji Bon Dance? So, and as a child, it's like you don't really register in a conscious way all of these things going on. So anyways, long story short, we go to the Bon Dance and she has a great time. She finds the whole thing beautiful. She finds the communal spirit wonderful. And I could feel an unconditional, unreserved sense of joy from her in it. And it had some kind of effect on me. Anyways, and so she actually took some pictures and that sort of thing. And anyways, so when I could start driving, I started driving myself to go to Bon Dances because I found it interesting because of Toyama-san, and I guess my grandmother gave me the green light unconsciously. And so I went to them, and particularly on my birthday weekend, which was in June, at that time when I was a teenager, Lahaina Shingon and Wailuku Jodo Mission had their dances on the same Friday, Saturday. So I would always make sure if I didn't go to any other dance in the year, I would go to those two dances. And then when I moved to Manoa for college, I went to a couple of Bon Dances in Honolulu, but I would always make sure to go to the Wailuku Jodo and Lahaina Shingon Bon Dance every year. And eventually I became a member of Iwakuni Odori Aiko Kai. I actually still am, although now with the early last flight, it's hard for me to go to Honolulu Bon Dances. So I still dance, and I've made a lot of friends. And of course, until recently, Bon Dances were really more of an older person thing. So actually a lot of the friends that I've made over the years have passed. But that's sort of part of the experience of participating in Obon. And so I have to say that for my own experience, when I dance, and the purpose of Obon is to recognize your ancestors and to honor your ancestors. And there's a whole story of syncretic Buddhism in Japan about Bon Dance. Anyways, long story short, when I do Obon, I do reflect on all of the people who I have taken on a part of them in my own existence in my own life. And I try to dance and with joy, and I try to enjoy myself. I almost always do. And I remember Toyama-san, who actually passed away in 2006. And actually, his son passed away in 2009. And my Lola, my grandmother, who passed away in 2010. And even this year, Auntie Bernie passed away earlier this year. And I think of her when I dance. And, you know, all of the aunties and uncles that I've become friends with over the years who've passed, and all of my family members who are no longer with us. I think about them when I'm enjoying and when I'm being joyful in the dance. And for me, obon in Hawaii, it's not really a Japanese thing, although it is a Japanese thing. But for me, it really is a way to connect the past with the future through me. And not just through me, but through all of the people in the present that I have a connection with in that dance, at that dance. And so for me, when it's like, well, let's talk about something about Maui. For me, I feel that bon dancing is that way to make a connection with all of the people that I am fortunate enough to be with in the present as a point of connecting the past to the future. So I hope that if you don't do bon dance, I hope that you consider supporting some of the temples that still have their dances coming up this year, and you go to one and have chow fun and shave ice and get in the ring and do some dancing. So mahalo.